Hi everyone, we're gonna try to get through the rest of this chapter. I still can't believe that previous video was 2 hours long and it was just half a chapter. Some of you guys thought that it was the end of the book. No, we're not even like halfway through the book. We're about a quarter through the book. And with all of these tired, repeated arguments, I'm really not sure how much more of this we can really take. I'm trying to be fair about it, and that's really the only thing keeping me to this. Plus, you guys giving me your comments and feedback about how much this is entertaining you. So there's at least that quality to it. But otherwise, yeah, I'm not having fun with this one. So with that being said, this is going to be same as usual. There's probably not going to be anything interesting going on the screen, but if there is, such as some kind of diagram, then I'll explain it to you, and that way you can just listen to it in the background if that's how you like to enjoy your YouTube videos. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So just as a quick reminder, we last left our heroes talking about two major topics. Number one, that there's enough information in the DNA or our genetic code that it's enough to fill like 1,000 encyclopedias. And the other argument was that they were trying to claim that scientists are automatically excluding God because they can't allow him to get his foot in the door just by the fact that you have to have something that's a testable hypothesis, basically. So now that we're all caught up, we're going to start a new section called Give Time and Chance a Chance. And how about you guys pause this and write what you think is going to happen next, so you can just make a prediction. My prediction is that they're going to make an argument that atheists appeal to time. This is something that I've heard from Christians and also Muslims. It was a video made by, I think it was Ali Dawa, and it's a video I've done on my channel. Where I was replying to some comments or that arguments against atheism that Ali Dawa thought were these slam dunk kind of answers, and they really just weren't. And it was this idea that as long as you give something enough time, then atheists think that anything can happen. We're probably going to get the junkyard tornado turning into a 747. Or that if you give enough time in the desert, something like a 747 will assemble. So we'll probably get that misunderstood kind of comment, but that's my guess. So let's go ahead and pause it here and lock in your guesses now. Look, this book is not fun. We gotta make our own fun here, okay? So, not so fast, say the Darwinists. You've overlooked time and chance as plausible explanations for how life spontaneously generated. I was going to say who is saying this, but I guess these Darwinists, these people that absolutely no person who understands evolution would ever label themselves as, I guess the strawman Darwinists are making the strawman argument. So give time more time. Darwinists dismiss the conclusion that intelligence was necessary for the first life by suggesting that more time would allow natural laws to do their work. Give it several billion years and eventually we'll get life. Is this plausible? Well, who is saying this? That's my question. Have any of you ever heard this argument from an atheist? I haven't. I've only heard this argument from theists claiming that it's an argument from atheists, but I actually haven't heard it from atheists. Let's go back to Mount Rushmore for a minute. Oh, here it is. If there was enough time, right guys? Darwinists assert that science is built on observation and repetition. Okay, suppose we observe and repeat an experiment. Will we allow natural laws to work on rock for the next 10 years? Will we ever get the faces on Mount Rushmore? Never. Well, aside from the fact that it's an artistic depiction, and ignoring the fact that there are some natural erosion that can look similar to a face, like that face on Mars, for example, why 10 years? Are they going to argue that, oh, well, it's not going to happen in 10 years, so it's going to happen in 100 years? Oh, it's not going to happen in 100 years, but if you give it 1,000 years, 10,000 years, a billion years, even if we gave it 10 billion years, this would never happen. That's my guess. That's my guess where this is going. Because 10 years, that's a bit low for erosion. You say maybe natural laws would do it if we give them billions of years. Oh, we didn't even have to. I thought we were gonna at least get a paragraph. We didn't. We got the next sentence. Wow. No, they wouldn't. Why? Because nature disorders. It doesn't organize things. The fact that nature brings things towards disorder is another aspect of the second law of thermodynamics. Now, look, guys, unlike our authors, I'm not a physicist and also don't pretend I know a lot of physics. So I'm going to ask that somebody more educated than I am on this topic explains how the law of entropy works, because as far as I understand, it's not this idea that disorder naturally happens, and especially this concept of disorder, how we think about it in everyday English. And this is something that is a big problem when it comes to science. Like the word theory, this is not the same as we mean it in everyday English. But in, psychology as well, terms like gaslighting, these are really specific psychological terms, but people in everyday English think that it's interchangeable with lying or something. So please help us out for those of us that aren't the best at physics. The only physics I really studied was like statics and dynamics stuff for engineering, and also things that go boom. P equals plenty, so for combat engineers in the Marine Corps, P equals plenty. If you put plenty of explosive, it'll blow up. That's about my extent to physics. So if you guys could help us out, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. More time would make things worse for Darwinists, not better. How so? Well, I'm already going to stop because, again, I don't go to theologians for physics. I just don't. And I don't know who would, but I guess how so? Let's go for it. Let's suppose you throw red, white, and blue confetti out of an airplane 10,000 feet above your house. What's the chance that it's going to form the American flag on your front lawn? Very low. Why? Because natural laws will mix up or randomize this is worse than what I thought. At least with the improper analogy of like the junkyard and the tornado, at least you can, or that a Boeing 747 will appear over time in the desert. I think the Ali Dawah one was about like a dessert appearing in a glass or something like that. At least that, it's sort of along the same lines of what they're trying to argue against with just this idea of like natural life, or life arising naturally. But this is like natural laws will mix up or randomize the confetti. It's like saying the purpose of wind and the purpose of, what would that be, wind resistance as the confetti is falling towards the ground, that the purpose of it is to randomize things. Like the purpose of me, if I fell out of an airplane or I jumped out and then I didn't open my chute because, you know what, I've had enough of this book. And so I just jump out of the plane and I don't want to open my chute. That as I splat across the side of the field, that's because naturally gravity just randomizes stuff. That's what they're saying. Oh, this is already terrible. Wow, we're not even half a page in, y'all. So natural laws mix it up. Okay, you say allow more time. No, I don't. Okay, let's take the plane up to 10,000 feet. See, we got what I was saying. We got it here. So we got the billions of years, and then we got the incremental. Well, if not at 1,000, let's do it at 10,000. This will give natural laws more time to work on the confetti. Does this improve the probability that the flag will form on your lawn? No, more time actually makes the flag less likely because natural laws have longer to do what they do: disorder and randomize. Don't they think things like birth are part of something that could be natural, or things like an acorn having all of the information to grow an oak tree, to use their terminology with that information thing? Don't they think this is part of the natural world? Do they think that every single thing is controlled by God? Now, some Christians do think this. I used to think this way, that everything happens is through God's will, and that maybe God set up things to work a certain way, but otherwise it's all through his will. But then wouldn't the natural laws be set up by God? So why would they naturally go towards disorder? That doesn't really make a lot of sense theologically, right? Why would God set, I mean, if that's what they believe that the natural laws, which includes birth and it includes plants growing from seeds, that these are going towards chaos, that from seed to tree, that is more chaotic or disorderly. So the tree is more disorderly than the seed, or the infant is more disorderly than the zygote, for example. But what about the fact that didn't God set this up? So why would God set up a bunch of natural laws to ruin everything? That just seems like a bizarre way to think. This one's new for me, just to think about it this way. I think that if I was in church and I heard about it, I probably wouldn't give it much thought. I know, Chloe, it's terrible. But yeah, that's this one. So what is different about the origin of the first life? Darwinists might say the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply continuously to living systems. Now that is one thing that I do know offhand, right? Is that it applies to only a closed system, and the Earth is not a closed system. That one I know because I have to teach geography. So why would they lie? They can't, I mean, why would they lie? I mean, this is at the very least, misrepresenting that a closed system is somehow synonymous with a dead system and an open system is synonymous with living system. I don't think they could argue that that's what they meant, that, oh, they just kind of swapped out a word. They really changed the meaning of this. After all, living things do grow and can get more ordered. Okay. You know what I feel like? I feel like if you just shook my head around and just said, hey, come up with all of the worst arguments from theism that you remember as a Christian, and then you had me just type a bunch of stuff after shaking my head, that would make more sense than this book, or at least it would make as much sense as this book, because I'm so far hitting on everything that they're saying. The food that goes into a living system is not processed at 100% efficiency. Yeah, neither is this book, because it's excrement. So the second law applies to living systems as well. But that's not even the point. Well, then why do you bring it up? You know what else is not at 100% efficiency? My cat using the litter box. You see, I'm so good at this that I'm even predicting the future in real time. Not just in the book, but also in reality. The point is, we're not talking about what something can do once it's alive. We're talking about getting a living thing in the first place. How does life arise from non-living chemicals without intelligent intervention when non-living chemicals are susceptible to the second law? Well, how do we know that creating life is not more quote-unquote disorderly than having non-life? I mean, we're pretty destructive beings, right? So aren't we more disorderly based off of their loose understanding of the term than something like, I don't know, a star? Aren't we worse and more destructive? I mean, I would say yeah. I mean, if you see my bedroom, that's very disorderly. You see my makeup cabinet, that's disorderly. I did not organize any of this, you know. Whereas, you know, something like hydrogen, that works out. Hey, it wasn't a bad joke. Shut up. So Darwinists have no answer. Well, I mean, I guess I'm not a Darwinist because I have an answer, right? Only faith. Okay. Give chance a chance. Can all the incredible specified complexity in life be explained by chance? Let me tell you about the specified complexity. That is the discs in my spine. Let me tell you about that. Because somebody second law disordered that, okay? Not a chance. Atheists and theists alike have calculated the probability that life could arise by chance from non-living chemicals. How did they calculate this probability? Now again, I'm no mathematician. But from my understanding, you need to have a set of options, like a set of outcomes to choose from, something like a six-sided die, right? So what's the probability that I'm going to roll a 4? And then what's the probability that I'm going to roll a 4 3 times in a row, for example. We can calculate that because there's a set number of outcomes. What are the set number of outcomes that we've calculated for intelligent life as we know it on this planet of Earth? We don't have a set number. So isn't that now, and again, I'm not a mathematician, if somebody can help me out here, but isn't that required to calculate probability? I might sound very, very stupid. So again, please correct me if I need help here. For example, Michael Behe has said who was Michael Behe again? This one I'm gonna look up. Just give me 2 seconds, because the name rings a bell and I'm not gonna remember it. So Michael Behe was one of the guys working at the Discovery Institute, which is one of the I guess institutes that tries to support intelligent design. So that's where I've heard the term. So Michael Behe said that the probability of getting one protein molecule, which has about 100 amino acids, by chance would be the same as a blindfolded man finding a marked grain of sand in the Sahara Desert 3 times in a row. Well, again, don't you have to know how many grains of sand exist in the Sahara Desert? I mean, if we're just doing the same kind of idea as a 6-sided die and rolling a 4 3 times in a row, which is amazing. I said 3 times in a row. The book says 3 times in a row. I mean, this, you can tell I was born and raised in this stuff, right? So this thing 3 times in a row. So wouldn't we, just as we have to know that there's 6 sides to the 6-sided die, don't we have to know how many grains of sand are in the Sahara? Is he kind of calculating it like, oh, if there's this many grains of sand in 1 square kilometer, that I don't know, because none of this is explained further. And 1 protein molecule is not life. To get life, you would need about 200 of those protein molecules together. That probability is virtually 0, but we believe the probability is actually 0. Why? Because chance is not a cause. Chance is a word that we use to describe mathematical possibilities. It has no power of its own. Chance is no thing. It's what rocks dream about. Well, great. Now we're at that same... This is perfect. We can use this as the definition for God as well. It's just a word that has no power of its own. It's no thing. It's what is used to describe something that creationists cannot explain. I love when they give these arguments, but they're just like, they're so close to getting it. If someone flips a fair coin, what's the chance it will come up on heads? 50%, we say. Yes. Well, I mean, isn't it technically it can land on the corner? Anyway, what causes it to come up on heads? Is it chance? No. The primary cause is an intelligent being who decided to flip the coin and apply so much force in doing so. Secondary causes, such as the physical forces of wind and gravity, also impact the results of the flip. If we knew all of those variables, we could calculate how the flip would turn out beforehand. But since we don't know those variables, we use the word chance to cover our ignorance. Oh my gosh. Oh my chance. It's been a rough few weeks, and I thought, I can sit down and I can make this video today, and all I'm left with wondering is I bothered to put on makeup for this. We shouldn't allow atheists to cover their ignorance with the word chance. Oh my goodness. Oh my chance. Oh my chance. If they don't know a natural mechanism by which the first life could have come into existence, they should just admit they don't know, rather than suggesting a powerless word that, of course, really isn't a cause at all. Chance is just another example of the bad science practiced by Darwinists. So, not only is this even more perfect of an example or an analogy that I said, or more analogous than I said. I can't even put the words together because I'm so blown away by how accurately that I've predicted what they're gonna say without realizing that I was predicting it consciously. But not only that, but this chance is just another example of the bad science practiced by Darwinists. This isn't even quote unquote practiced by Darwin. Again, who are these Darwinists and how are they doing bad science? Evolution talks about how life changes. It doesn't talk about how life starts. I don't understand why they keep thinking they've got this. I are they really this? Are they really this? I hate using this word, but are they really this stupid? Or are they doing this on purpose because they think the people who read it are stupid? I mean, are they of little intelligence, or are they insulting the intelligence of their readers? You know, hey, I got your money, haha, that's all I needed. You know, science is a slave to philosophy. Well, I mean, yeah, and a hammer is a slave to my hand. What? It's just a tool, y'all. Unfortunately, Darwinists have been successful in convincing the public that the only bad science is that which disagrees with Darwinism, and that really isn't science at all, they say. It's just religion masquerading as science. Well, I mean, either you can test it or you can't. I mean, there's no, it's not anybody's interpretation. This isn't scripture. It's just a pretty straightforward definition. In fact, the exact opposite is true. It's the Darwinists who are practicing the bad science because their science is built on a false philosophy. In effect, it's their secular religion of naturalism that leads them to ignore the empirically detectable scientific evidence for design. Oh, good! We're going to get into the empirically detectable scientific evidence for design. So again, I will let you pause, take a drink from my non-alcoholic Heineken, so you guys can make a prediction about what you think the empirically detectable scientific evidence for design. What could it be? Empirically detectable. What could it be? I'm gonna guess it's gonna be something similar to what they've said here, where it's not detectable. They're just going to say, therefore, I think that this is not likely, or I can't see how this happens unless I say God did it, so God therefore did it. So let's find out. What lessons can we learn from the bad science of Darwinists? To answer that, let's look at more of a debate we cited in Chapter 3 between William Lane Craig, a Christian, and Darwinist Peter Atkins. You know, I bet William Lane Craig would define him or describe himself as a Christian. Does Peter Atkins describe himself as a Darwinist, or does he describe himself as a evolutionary biologist, for example? I wouldn't say William Lane Craig, that fool who believes in magical sky fairies or something, right? I mean, why? I think the other problem too is that they described. No, they didn't describe it. When I looked up Michael Behe, it talked about him being some kind of biochemist. They like to use those terms when it applies to a Christian, but I've noticed that when it comes to an atheist, that they're talking about, we get words like Darwinist. It really tries to take away the credit of their degree and their education on the topic. Recall that the debate was over the existence of God. At one point, Atkins argued that God wasn't necessary because science could explain everything. There is no need for God, declared Atkins. Everything in the world can be understood without needing to evoke a God. You have to accept that that's one possible view to take about the world. Sure, that's possible, Craig admitted, but... And then Atkins challenges him, interrupting. Do you deny that science can account for everything? Challenged Atkins. Yes, I do deny that science can account for everything, said Craig. So what can't it account for? Demanded Atkins. Oh, here it is, guys. Empirically... What was their phrase? Empirically... Oh my goodness. Detectable scientific evidence for design. All right. A veteran of many debates, Craig was ready with a multifaceted answer. This is one reason I don't like about debates, is that the better that you get at debates, the more convincing you might sound, especially if people in the audience are just more inclined to believe your side of the argument, you know. I don't like debates because you're not presenting evidence. You're just able to argue your way a little bit better, and it's just sort of a who's more charismatic in that sense. I think there are a good number of things that cannot be scientifically proven, but we are all rational to accept, he said. Okay, let me guess. That's something that everything, he's probably going to do the one about the first cause. That we all have consciousness, and that other consciousnesses exist. And I'm not sure after that. All right. So Craig cites 5 examples of rational beliefs that cannot be proven by science. Number 1, mathematics and logic. Science can't prove them because science presupposes them. Number 2, metaphysical truths such as there are minds that exist other than my own. Number 3, ethical judgments. You can't prove by science that the Nazis were evil because morality is not subjective to the scientific method. Aesthetic judgments, the beautiful, like the good, cannot be scientifically proven, and ironically, science itself, the belief that scientific method discovers truth, cannot be proven by the scientific method itself. More on this below. Well, sure, it's a definition, right? If we define science as a tool that we can use, then we don't have to use the tool to prove the definition we've defined it. And I think with math and logic, there was something that I heard about why this doesn't, why saying it can't be proven by science is it's a moot point. I forget the argument for why. So if anybody or can think about or knows that offhand, please feel free to share it. Otherwise, the big deal here, the big problem is that we're not Christians like the authors. They're trying to make claims that can be scientifically testable, or they're trying to make claims that they want to say are scientific. These are guys like the intelligent design guys like Michael Behe. These are people that are trying to say this is a scientific argument, this is a scientific hypothesis, but we can't provide any way to test it. So I think this is where the problem kind of comes in, is that, yeah, we can recognize that not everything falls under needing to be proven by science, but you're trying to make a claim about something that affects the natural world, which is that a God exists and that it creates things. This is not an argument about aesthetics. This is not an argument about personal opinions, metaphysical truths like other minds exist. This is not even an argument about ethical judgments. Some people might talk about God creating ethics, but that aside, we're talking about just this person made this thing, or this being made this thing. That is just something we can observe. So if we can't observe and detect it, or this empirically detectable scientific evidence, I'm interested in where this is going, because I don't know how they're going to try to argue this. Following this barrage of examples refuting Atkins' view, moderator William F. Buckley Jr. could not hide his pleasure with Craig's answer. He peered over Atkins and cracked, "So put that in your pipe and smoke it." Wow. I love how they're saying this is like a, wow, he really got him, as opposed to, wow, what a really inappropriate debate monitor. Craig was right. The scientific method of searching for causes by observation and repetition is but one means of finding truth. It is not the only means of finding truth. As we saw in Chapter 1, non-scientific or philosophical laws, such as the laws of logic, help us discover truth as well. In fact, those laws are used by the scientific method. But wasn't the argument that they were making in Chapter 1 something along the lines of, these are things we can absolutely demonstrate to be very reasonable, and therefore if any atheist rejects it, it's because they just don't want to believe? So how come if it's something that we can demonstrate, I don't know. Let's see where this goes. Moreover, Atkins' claim that science can account for everything is not false, only because of 5 counterexamples Craig noted. It is also false because it is self-defeating. In effect, Atkins was saying science is the only objective source of truth. Okay, well, who cares what Atkins says? We could look at the definition. We could look at, what are you trying to say? Is this something that falls under the realm of a scientific investigation? So why are they talking about Atkins like he's this archbishop of science, and he's the one that holds all the keys to science? This is where the problem comes in when theists who default to this authority figure, they think that science and other things like it default to an authority figure, and it just doesn't. If we were to test that statement by the Roadrunner tactic, let's not. From Chapter 1, we see it as self-defeating and therefore false. The statement, science is the only source of objective truth, claims to be an objective truth, but it's not a scientific truth. The statement itself is philosophical in nature. It can't be proven by science, so it defeats itself. Congratulations, guys. You played word games. So far, we still haven't made any demonstrable scientific claims or empirically detectable scientific evidence. This leads us to perhaps the greatest lesson we can learn from the bad science of the Darwinists. Science is built on philosophy. Indeed, science is a slave to philosophy. Again, it's like saying this tool is a slave to my hand. It doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't mean that other tools don't exist. It's just if I'm going to use something that requires a hammer, then trying to say, well, we could use this feather too, or perhaps no hammers really are needed, and in fact it was the magic hammer that caused all of this to just be hammered down. These are things that don't really make sense. You would never argue them, right? So this idea that we're just going to throw away science because wait, so what? I guess what, sorry, the bad science? What is the bad science? Bad science is a slave to, so bad philosophy, okay, results in bad science. And good science requires good philosophy. Okay, so they're not saying science is bad, they're not saying philosophy is bad, they're just saying if we disagree with it because we don't understand it, or because we're deliberately misrepresenting it because we don't assume that our audience is going to be atheists, then it's bad. Okay. So number one, science cannot be done without philosophy. Philosophical assumptions are utilized in the search for causes and therefore cannot be the result of them. For example, scientists assume by faith that reason and the scientific method allow us to accurately understand the world around us. Okay, so wait, is it by faith or is it by philosophy? Are they saying philosophy is faith? That cannot be proven by science itself. You can't prove the tools of science, the laws of logic, the law of causality, the principle of uniformity, or the reliability of observation by running some kind of experiment. You have to assume those things are true in order to do the experiment. So science is built on philosophy. Unfortunately, many so-called scientists are very poor philosophers. Well, I mean, are they making the claim that the scientific method does not allow us to accurately understand the world around us? Because that's what they're saying is this assumption, this foolish assumption that the scientific method helps us understand the world around us, and accurately so. So if they're making this claim that this is a foolish assumption, then this is the bad philosophy? Well, then what's the alternative? I mean, what alternative are they proposing? That we should just, I mean, how would you test for some kind of roofing material that best waterproofs your housing structure, right? What are they saying that we should do? We should just pray on it? That we should use a moral search or have a metaphysical idea that because other brains exist, something, this has the ability to keep out moisture? And what are they saying is the better philosophy? I'm not sure. They better come up with something. Part 2, philosophical assumptions can dramatically impact scientific conclusions. Well, sure, that's true. I mean, if you're coming at something from an approach that most of human behavior comes down to nature versus nurture, or that the social impact of the school is more impactful than the social impact of the family in certain types of childhoods, then yeah, we can, this kind of determines how you create your experiment or how you create your study, and then the types of information you're going to gather from that study. But let's see what they have to say. If a scientist assumes beforehand that only natural causes are possible, then probably no amount of evidence will convince him that intelligence created the first one-celled amoeba or any other designed entity. Well, no, I don't think that they assume beforehand, but again, it's something that is testable. How are we testing the supernatural? And this is where, I've been arguing against them in the past video as well. They make this idea that these shadowy, dirty scientists have just kind of written God out of the equation, and they can't. It's just, how do you test for God, especially if your Bible says that God cannot be tested? Well, if we cannot test stuff and science requires us to test stuff, then this isn't an issue for science. That's it. When Darwinists presuppose that intelligent causes are impossible, then natural laws are the only game in town. Likewise, if a creationist rules out natural causes beforehand, and we don't know of any who do, then he also risks missing the right answer. Really? So creationists are open to the idea that it's not God that created all life? Really? I mean, isn't that sort of built into the name? At least with Darwinists, it's presupposed that this person understands that the theory is about change over time. It's not about the first life. So they're not ruling anything out. They're just saying, hey, we're talking about change over time that we can measure. Where a creationist, that's part of their name. They are a creationist because they've decided to rule out all other possibilities. So a scientist who's open-minded to both natural and intelligent causes can follow the evidence wherever it leads. Sure, have you guys done that? Part 3, science doesn't really say anything. Scientists do. Data are always interpreted by scientists. When those scientists let their personal preferences or unproven philosophical assumptions dictate their interpretation of the evidence, they do exactly what they accuse religious people of doing. They let their ideology dictate their conclusions. And when that's the case, their conclusions should be questioned because they may be nothing more than philosophical presuppositions passed off as scientific facts. Well, great. You've just explained why the Discovery Institute doesn't really work out too well. Materialism makes reason impossible. Well, wait. Weren't we whoa, we're starting a whole new, so these are all little subsections, but we're starting a new section. And where do we have the empirically detectable scientific evidence for design? We were promised this, right? Weren't we promised this in this section? So we had some subsections, and now we're getting another main section, or main section. Where is this? All they said was we have empirically detectable scientific evidence for design, but science is just like bad philosophy. Anyway, let's go on. That's all. That's all. Wow. I mean, even I did not predict this. That's new to me. You know. Hey, let me help you out. I'll give you some information. You know what? Nope. Let's just move on and pretend that, and assume you forgot what I was going to say. Materialism makes reason impossible. When you get down to the root of the problem, you'll find that bad science of Darwinists results from the false philosophy of naturalism or materialism at the foundation of their worldview. Why is materialism false? Here are 5 reasons why materialism is not reasonable. Okay, what was the name of this section again? I mean, what's the name of this chapter? What is it? The First Life, Natural Law, or Divine Awe. That's the name of this chapter. Materialism makes reason impossible. So, how is this related? That because we can reason, well, some of us can reason, that there has to be a God? Let's see what they say. First, as we've already pointed out, there is a message resident in life, technically called specified complexity, that cannot be explained materially. Now, not only can this be explained materially, as it has been, and I'm sure you guys already know the arguments about things like the neck of the giraffe and how one of the nerves has to wrap around its heart and things like that. That's a mistake, quote unquote, that evolution would make, because it's just using the available materials as opposed to a divine, perfect God. But I also mentioned that the more complex something is, then the less likely it was correctly designed. So if God exists, then he's a very bad engineer. So I don't know why they think this is such a good argument. This message cannot be explained by non-intelligent natural laws any more than the message in this book can be explained by the non-intelligent laws of ink and paper. What are the laws of ink and paper? See, I mean, the message, I mean, you're right. The message in this book was definitely I would say if we left the ink and the paper to do what it does without human interference, that would have been a better outcome than the quote unquote intelligent interference of the authors. Second, human thoughts and theories are not comprised of only materials. Chemicals are certainly involved in the human thought process, but they cannot explain all human thoughts. The theory, in italics, of materialism isn't made of molecules. Likewise, someone's thoughts, whether they be love or hate, are not chemicals. Really? Really? I mean, so you're saying that when people, I mean, I guess the feelings are influenced by the chemicals, and then the thoughts arising from those chemical feelings, they're saying they're not made of molecules. Okay. I don't. So what? I mean, who's saying material? Who's saying that like this is it's what is this, the reductio ad absurdum or something? It's like to completely ignore any argument or nuance that's really being made, and to make it seem like it's really simply stupid, because to remove all nuance will make it sound stupid. Like when they simplify it in a stupid manner. Is that what this is called? I think you guys probably understand what I mean. I don't think any person who says who follows materialism would say that thoughts don't exist, or that thoughts are made out of molecules. But at the same time, why are they saying this is the only option? Why is it materialism or God? I don't know when we've established that those are the only two options. That's kind of bizarre. These are absurd questions because thoughts, convictions, and emotions are not completely materially based. Since they're not completely materially based, materialism is false. Oh, okay. So again, who cares? I never said I'm a materialist. Are we going to argue against what atheists are actually saying? Third, if life were nothing more than materials, then we'd be able to take all the materials of life, which are not the same materials found in dirt, and make a living being. Wow, which are not the same materials found in dirt. So we could take all the materials in life, which are not all the same materials found in dirt, and make a living being, which I love, because isn't that how Adam was formed? From the dirt? But I guess it was the dirt and the breath of a supernatural being, which of course we're just going to assume is there because that makes more sense than just the dirt by itself. Why? But again, why are we making assumptions anyway? I don't know how the first life happened. We don't have to assume it. Why are we assuming it? I hope they answer that question. There's clearly something beyond materials in life. What materialist can explain why one body is alive and another body is dead? Both contain the same chemicals. Why is a body alive one minute and dead the next? What combination of materials can account for consciousness? Even Atkins, in his debate with Craig, admitted that explaining consciousness is a great problem for atheists. I don't think so. So why would it be? Have you, I think it was Matt Dillahunty I heard first say this, when have you seen consciousness without a brain? We may not understand everything about it, but we know that one of the basic components is we need a brain. The brain needs to be in a living being, and it needs to be at least aware of what's going on around it because of how we've defined the word consciousness. So we're getting there. What part of that do we get to say, oh God? Where do we get to insert that? That's still not explained. Fourth, if materialism is true, then everyone in all of human history who has ever had any kind of spiritual experience has been completely mistaken. That is one I did not expect, because that is an argument I didn't expect. Did you expect that? That if materialism is true, then spiritual experiences, something must have happened, because we know spiritual experiences are true, so materialism can't be true. That's what they're really saying. We know spiritual experiences happen, therefore materialism can't be true. That is a very bold claim. While this is possible, given the vast number of spiritual experiences, it doesn't seem likely. Why? People have been mistaken in the past in a very big way that is cross-cultural. Why would this be any different? And that's the thing I don't really understand is that we have all these sociological phenomenon that appear in different societies throughout time and across cultures, even cultures that didn't interact with each other, and yet we just accept that that's a byproduct of being human. But as soon as it comes to something like a spiritual experience or so-called spiritual experience, then no longer is it just a byproduct of being human. It has to be some kind of byproduct of the divine. And that's kind of bizarre to just make that assumption. I'm not saying it can't be true, but if everything else seems so we're using the arguments against them as well. If everything else seems to point to something that is sociological in origin, why do we get to say that this is divine in origin? So it is difficult to believe that every great spiritual leader and thinker in the history of humanity, including some of the most rational, scientific, and critical minds ever, have all been completely wrong about their spiritual experience. I had a few videos that I made about having spiritual experiences. I definitely believe that I had spiritual experiences. I no longer believe that's the case. And there's a lot of very interesting research on it, and maybe I'll make a video about that. But this idea that just because we're rational and scientific, it means that we can't be mistaken, especially in a culture that believes in spiritual experiences, and that if you meet certain criteria that we've defined as a spiritual experience, you will define your experience as a spiritual one. I mean, that's not a weird thing. It's not that they're completely wrong. It's that it's culturally acceptable, it's culturally defined, and it seems to meet the criteria or to meet the definition, so that's how we define that experience. If we get chills listening to gospel music, that's not a spiritual experience. But if we're told that it's a spiritual experience, when we get those chills, when the little hairs on my arms start to stand up on end when I listen to Christian music, that is a sign of the divine, which is one of the things that I used to actually think. And then I started to get that same feeling, those same chills, or that same response when I would listen to other types of music. And I thought, well, wait a minute, if this music that happens to me during worship, if this is something that I know is a spiritual experience, and I know it's evidence of God, then how is this happening without this music? How is this happening with music that has nothing to do with God? This includes Abraham, Moses, Isaiah, Kepler, Newton, Pascal, and Jesus Christ himself. Wow, so these are the most rational, scientific, and critical minds ever. Moses. I like how they throw in, what was that? It's like the Star Trek effect or something. You list two names that are scientific, and then you list a third one to cover the past couple centuries or so. So Kepler, the great scientific minds like Kepler, Newton, and Pazuzu, it's like one of those things. So yeah, like these spiritual and scientific and rational minds like Newton, Pascal, Moses. Okay, great. If just one spiritual experience in the entire history of the world is true, then materialism is false. Okay, well first of all, that's a big if, and you're gonna have to demonstrate that, but again, who cares? Finally, if materialism is true, then reason itself is impossible, for the mental processes are nothing but chemical reactions in the brain. Then there's no reason to believe that anything is true, including the theory of materialism. Chemicals can't evaluate whether a theory is true. Chemicals don't reason, they react. Well then, wait, isn't this the first one? No, this is the second one. So we're not really listing 5, we're listing 4. And if this was so amazing that it's like the slam dunk, it's at the final nail in the coffin, why not just have started it off with that and not included any of these other not very good arguments? This is supremely ironic because Darwinists who champion truth and reason have made truth and reason impossible by their theory of materialism. What? So how are we saying that evolutionary biologists are automatically materialists, or not materialists, but follow materialism? This is bizarre. This is really bizarre. So when they say that science is a tool to help us understand the world around us, and science can only measure something that where science is the tool of science is only helpful if there's something that we can make a hypothesis about that is a testable hypothesis, and then later go on to test it. That somehow means that they're automatically thinking that way about everything else, even after they just said that guys like Newton was also Christian. So we can see that Newton isn't saying that everything is math and physics just because that's what he's he's famous for, and that's what he's studied, right? I mean, just like I don't think every problem in life can be solved by psychology. I mean, there are mathematical problems in life, right? I don't approach everything with psychology. Just because I studied it doesn't mean that that's all that I can approach. So why are they saying that, well, if you follow and understand the theory of evolution, you only believe in a very narrow definition that we've decided is what you believe about science? This doesn't make... I mean, this is... Oh my goodness. How many calories did they burn with this mental gymnastics? This is a lot. This is a lot of nonsense. And they're not even arguing what atheists even think. What a waste of paper and ink. Or electricity in this case. So even when Darwinists are right about something, their worldview gives us no reason to believe them, because reason itself is impossible in a world governed only by chemical and physical forces. I mean, really, that is what they think. That if they're a mathematician, they think that everything can only be solved by math. Or if they're a mechanic, then it can only be solved with mechanical things, and that they must not that they must not believe in electricity. That's really what they're saying? That because some people study biology or evolutionary biology, that they can't recognize that there are problems outside of that subject? That's really what they're saying? Not only is reason impossible in a Darwinian world, no it's not, but the Darwinist assertion is that we should rely on reason alone cannot be justified. I mean, it's not. There's even a subfield of psychology called evolutionary psychology. It's about how we think because of evolution. So this idea that Darwinists, quote unquote, have to be materialist, it's just such a, wow. Because reason actually requires faith. Hey guys, it requires faith. As Jay Budzowski points out, the motto, reason alone is nonsense anyway. Reason itself presupposes faith. Why? Because a defense of reason by reason is circular, therefore worthless. Our only guarantee that human reason works is God who made it. So reason being reasonable is circular and therefore worthless. But if we make up a creator of reason, that is awesome and factual and not worthless. So if you presuppose that reason exists or that logical conclusions can be drawn, and we just say, okay, we just kind of understand that some of these are in existence similar to other, like physical laws, for example, that's bad. But if we say that those things exist because God made it, even though we can't demonstrate God, we can just say that this is from God. That is awesome and not worthless. That is pretty bizarre. Let's unpack Budzowski's point. Let's not. Let's talk to an atheist. How about that? How about talking to an atheist and actually addressing what an atheist would believe? So let's unpack his point by considering the source of reason. Our ability to reason can come from only one of two places. Either our ability to reason arose from pre-existing intelligence, or it arose from mindless matter. I don't know, maybe there's a third option we don't know about, but sure. The atheist / Darwinist / materialist. So now we're all just a big similar thing. They don't even talk to us, do they? They don't even talk to us. They talk at us. They talk about us. They don't talk to us, though. Maybe they talk to us, but not with us. I don't know. They believe by faith that our minds arose from mindless matter without intelligent intervention. No, they just say we can't assume that that's what happened. We say it is by faith because it contradicts all scientific observation, which demonstrates that an effect cannot be greater than its cause. What do you mean greater? Greater in which way? Like, if I push somebody and then they fall down and they break their neck and they die, I would say the effect of them dying is probably greater than my small push, right? So that's such a weird, or that somebody coughing really loud, for example, in like a Looney Tunes kind of thing, like a loud cough or a bang. Let's say it like a cannon. That's setting off an avalanche. And the amount of force or the amount of power in an avalanche is greater than that of the cannon. But they just said that in effect, the avalanche cannot be greater than the cause, which is the cannon. This is just false. This is just false. I mean, what? Who? They're just making up terms now about this. It can't be greater than the cause. Who says this? I've never heard this other than from a creationist. You can't give what you haven't got. The materialists believe that dead, unintelligent matter has produced intelligent life. Not in this book. It's like believing that the Library of Congress resulted from an explosion in a printing shop. Hey, bingo card, we got it. It makes much more sense to believe that a human mind is made in the image of the great mind, God. Okay, so it makes much more sense to say, instead of saying, that's interesting, I guess we'll try to figure it out and not make any assumptions until we do, it makes a lot more sense to just make an assumption. Not only an assumption, but an assumption that we can't demonstrate. Or, in other words, it's just that word that is no thing. The word they say, like cause, is no thing. It's just kind of how we're explaining stuff we don't want to think about or understand. We're back to that. In other words, our minds can apprehend truth and can reason about reality because they were built by the architect, capital A, of truth, reality, and reason itself. Materialism cannot explain reason any more than it can explain life. Materialism is just not reasonable. Therefore, we don't have enough faith to be materialists. How many pages was this? All right, it's felt longer. This is about 2 pages? And it was useless. It was just useless. It was them filling up space on pages. That's all it was. They made up an argument that nobody cares about. Nobody's arguing. And then they decided that, it's stupid. Congratulations, you've wasted time. The atheist versus the critical thinking consultant. The very fact that Darwinists think that they have reasons to be atheists actually presupposes that gods exist. Oh boy. How so? Because reasons require that the universe be reasonable, be a reasonable one that presupposes there is order, logic, and design and truth. Not design, where you're just smuggling that in. What do you mean it presupposes design? But order, logic, design, and truth can only exist and be known if there is an unchangeable objective source and standard of such things. To say something is unreasonable, Darwinists must know what reasonable is. To say it's not design, we must know what designed is. Well, yeah, that's why we have the natural world versus the design world. But now you're saying that the design world, or the natural world, is also the design world. So then how do you differentiate it? One's designed by God and one's not? Well, then anything can be designed by God. This doesn't even make sense. Just from their point of view. To say something is not true, they must know what truth is, and so forth. Like all non-theistic worldviews, Darwinism borrows from the theistic worldview in order to make its own view intelligible. This is just like such a common phrase that it may as well be written from a script, that X borrows from the theistic worldview in order to make its own view intelligible. And the reason for this is because they've decided. That's all. They've decided. They've decided that if something is true, there must be an ultimate truth. That truth is God, so therefore anybody who believes in truth must believe in God. And all they did was define God into the argument. I wouldn't even say existence, but they defined God into the argument. Isn't that the same as if I just use the word chance? Or some other term that could just be or some other God instead of the capital G Yahweh God. I mean, you guys see how this is just, it's just bad. And I think this was, one of the issues I had to deal with as a Christian was that a lot of this stuff I felt like, well, this must make sense, and this must this, and this must this, because God, God, God. And this idea that I had to try to explain, I know it's God because. And I couldn't use anything else. And that's where I really got stuck. I couldn't say, well, I've defined God as the ultimate truth. Truth exists, therefore God exists. I had to take all of that away and try to say, can I just show God? Like I can define me, right? Or I can define my brother, or I can define just any other person with certain attributes. Oh, they're capable of this, or they look a certain way, or whatever, right? I first need to, like, if we just strip all of that away, I have to prove that there is actually a person that I'm even talking about. Maybe I can call them on the phone, have them identify who they are, take a DNA test. We could, if I'm trying to prove this person's my brother, for example, you don't have to take my word for it. And I don't have to say, well, he's my brother because, and then define certain things that he can do, or certain ways that he looks, or that I feel he looks. This is just bizarre. And this is where I really got stuck. Because God just seemed to be a bunch of things that I said he was. He is reason. He is love. He is logic. He is the creator. He is this. But to go back a step and say, first, let me just show you that this God even is, period. That's something I had just assumed. I assumed I was having spiritual experiences because I assumed the spiritual world existed. Without that assumption, these experiences were just experiences that honestly were not very remarkable at all. Like the hair standing up on my arms, listening to music. That's not remarkable. That happens to a lot of people. And why would a God have to be involved in that? Especially if I'm listening to rock music that has nothing to do with God. Why would I assume that this had to do with God? And this is where they're at here in this paragraph, is they're saying, oh, well, obviously atheists are, they prove that theism is real because we've defined God using a very specific set of terms. And if atheists believe those terms, they also believe in God. Well, you still have to show God. And they've yet to do that. This tendency of atheists to borrow unwittingly from the theistic worldview was beautifully exposed by author Pete Bocchino during a curriculum meeting for the state of Georgia's Department of Education. Pete, who was working for an internationally known Christian ministry at the time, was slated to be on a subcommittee to review and improve the 6th to 12th grade public school curriculum in subjects such as U.S. government, laws, ethics, and character training. Let me guess, he wants to put the 10 Commandments in there, and they said no, because that's religious, but he said, oh, but don't you also think that murder's wrong? So you're borrowing from a theistic worldview. Let's just see if this is what happens. The first week of a week-long series of meetings was held in a large room where all the subcommittee members were given an opportunity to introduce themselves. Pete, who got held up in traffic, arrived late, missed the introductions, and started heading for his seat. When the subcommittee chairman noticed Pete walking in, he told him they already introduced themselves and asked Pete to do so by giving his name, background, and occupation. Pete gave his name and said that he only had a degree in mechanical engineering. Pete thought to himself, I certainly don't want to bring Christianity into this by telling them I work for an international Christian ministry. So he cryptically said, I currently work for a not-for-profit organization as a critical thinking consultant. The chairman said, a what? A critical thinking consultant, Pete repeated. So would this count as a lie? We're deliberately hiding the truth so we could jump in on this school curriculum board meeting? Do you think God was happy with this? Well, what exactly does a critical thinking consultant do? The chairman persisted. Well, we're already running late, and I don't want to take up the committee's time, Pete reasoned, but you'll find out during the week. Wow. So I certainly don't want to bring Christianity into this by telling them that I work for an international Christian ministry. Why not? Are you not supposed to be here? Does this make you suspicious? What does this... Why not? And then if there is an ultimate truth and an ultimate morality, etc., like Christians like to say, then this would be a lie, and lying is wrong, right? This doesn't count as like a white lie or like a little pulled a sneaky on you, you know? This is just a lie. This is just hiding the truth when you were being directly asked to share it. As the week progressed, the committee debated various topics such as diversity, tolerance, human rights, and other controversial issues. Yeah, those controversial issues like human rights. And diversity and tolerance, what a controversy. At one point, when they were discussing psychology standards, Pete noted that the standards did not contain the definition of personhood. This was a gaping hole in the psychology curriculum, so Pete submitted the following definition based on the Mortimer Adler's book, Haves Without Have-Nots. Why is Pete a guy who has a degree in mechanical engineering, but not traffic engineering, right? Because he couldn't predict that he was going to be caught in traffic, right? Just a little joke, but why is he the one saying, oh, I'll submit the definition for psychology? I mean, so far, this kind of highlights how poorly the state of Georgia's Department of Education, how little it thinks of education. Hey, let's just grab any random assortment of people with any random assortment of qualifications and let them choose the curriculum. That's why is a non-psychologist giving any definition of psychology? All right, evaluates the uniqueness of human nature and the concept of personhood. What? Topic is uniqueness. What about uniqueness? What do you mean uniqueness of human nature? So this by itself is bizarre because we use like how animals like rats and mazes having that can demonstrate latent learning, for example. The Skinner box with operant conditioning using not only pigeons but in some instances also mice, but pigeons are definitely the famous one. How are we getting to the uniqueness of human nature? Even in the psychology textbook that I teach from, it talks a lot about how there's other animals showcase some examples of like morality or something we would define as or identify as morality, consciousness, and those sorts of things. Problem-solving skills. So that would be a type of intelligence, like with what are they called? Corvids or ravens or crows. I think they fall under corvid. So I'm just confused by this. The standard evaluates the uniqueness of human nature and the concept of personhood. I understand the concept of autonomy and consciousness, but this idea of personhood, I haven't read about that. From my textbook or from my master's degree. So that's interesting that this handful of non-psychologists are creating a psychology curriculum. And this is what they've got. So intellect or in conceptual thought, freedom to choose or free will. That's a big one. Do we have free will, right? So I guess that topic, ethical responsibility, standards, moral accountability, obligations, standards and obligations, and inalienable rights of personhood. Are they talking about human rights? Is that what personhood is? Is human rights? If we're talking about it in terms of like ethical responsibility of psychologists where they can't conduct studies like the little Albert study that caused demonstrable harm to the child in that experiment, is that where they're talking about not violating human rights or doing less harm or no harm or the least amount of harm, or that the good outweighs the harm for the subjects that are participants, or what are they talking about? As soon as this is the standard. Oh, this isn't for discussion. This is the standard. This isn't part of the curriculum to discuss. This is the standard. Okay. An educator sitting across from Pete, who had made it known that she was an atheist. Okay, that's bizarre. See, it's those atheists can't stop talking about atheism, you guys. was about to challenge the standard, but before she could do that, Pete stopped her and said to the group, if anyone disagrees with the standard, they would be doing the following. Number one, that person would be engaging me in a conceptual thought, as in one. That person would be exercising his or her freedom to do so, as in part two. That person must think there is an ethical responsibility to teach what is right or true. That person is holding me to morally accountable to teach the truth. That person has the right to disagree with my position, as in person or part five. Inalienable rights of person. So you're talking about human rights, I guess, or okay. So if one were to disagree with these criteria, that person would actually confirm the validity of each of these points of criteria. No. So are they saying that that if you are in a coma, that you are not a person, that you've lost your personhood in a coma? Are they saying that if you are of lesser intellect, so this is somebody who maybe doesn't meet the minimum standards for certain jobs, for example, just based on like certain intellectual criteria, does that mean that they are not human? So wait, wouldn't this be perfect for anybody who's a Christian who believes that a zygote has personhood? They don't have freedom of choice. They don't have intellect. They don't have any ethical responsibility, moral accountability, or human rights, according to this. So, good job including this, guys. Maybe you guys should have... You know what? Never mind. I was going to say they should have asked a psychologist to weigh in on this, but... I mean, these are two theologians talking about things they have no business talking about. Obviously, they think it's okay for a mechanical engineer with a Christian slant to misrepresent himself so he can jump in on something that he has no business being in on. Otherwise, why would he lie about it? To make up standards and curriculum for a subject that he is not educated on. Great. Wonderful. The group became rather quiet for a moment. Then the chairman spoke up and said, now we know what a critical thinking consultant does. Wow, yeah. So a critical thinking consultant says stuff that feels true without any qualifications. That's it. So didn't they say that he would talk about his Christianity later on? Or no, he would tell them what it is later on. Okay. So because other people who also are not psychologists said, wow, this guy seems psychological, then that's... Like, I feel really bad here for just the children who go through the state of Georgia's school system. Like, this is what's allowed, is a bunch of people who aren't qualified pretending that they're qualified and patting themselves on the back. That's what this is about. And then if anybody has any objections, and again, they're not able to articulate them properly. I mean, I just, you notice how quickly I pulled this apart in terms of something that makes a person, right? By these standards. And not only that, we can extend all of these to a lot of other animals. Definitely the other great apes, probably a lot of the other monkeys, or not other monkeys, but a lot of the monkeys as well. I mean, these are rats probably fall under this because they have moral accountability to each other. We've seen it in like an experiment about having it was either rats or mice, but they could freely eat the chocolate. There was like chocolate chips provided, and there was another fellow rat or mouse that was it was in this clear cage. Now the cage is something that the trapped mouse or rat couldn't get out of, but the other one that was free could open it pretty easily. So the free mouse or rat had the option to just eat all the chocolates first and then help its mouse companion or fellow mouse or fellow rat. It could have just eaten the chocolates and not helped them out. Or it could let the other mouse or rat out and then share the chocolates. And this is something that we would consider to be like a morally correct answer, or something that is ethical to do. That if it would be unethical or immoral to just sit here and gorge yourself while a fellow human is trapped, and then release the other human, and you guys don't actually know when you're going to eat next. And you definitely don't know when you're going to get a sweet treat like chocolate next. So assume you're prisoners like the rats are in these experiments, right? And to refuse to let out the other prisoner while you sit here and gorge yourself on some tasty treat, such as chocolate, we would consider that to be pretty selfish, jackass kind of behavior. And these rats are showing it, so doesn't that mean that these rats have inalienable rights of personhood? That they can fight for their own freedom? They seek out places to live and to raise, what do they call, broods? So like these groups of rats raising these communities. I mean, that sounds like it meets all of these. So, I don't know, maybe you should ask somebody who has a degree in psychology. Because not only assuming this story is true, not only did the mechanical engineer not see the problem, and nobody else at the table saw the problem, but neither did Turek or Geisler, who inserted this story into their book. Nobody saw that this was a problem in terms of trying to identify what is personhood, or if that's even a term that's common in psychology or has a specified definition in psychology. Yeah, maybe you should have asked somebody with a degree. So I guess that kind of goes with what I'm saying, where no, I'm going to ask a theologian about theology. I'm not going to ask theologians about everything else they were talking about in this book. With a little critical thinking, we see the Darwinian worldview collapses not only from a lack of evidence. Wait, how? What? So with that, he told the committee secretary to include the standard in the recommendations. With a little critical thinking, we see that the Darwinian worldview collapses from not only a lack of evidence, but because Darwinists must borrow from theistic worldview and attempt to make a case. Where is the theistic worldview? Like, why was it even important to say that he was a Christian? Where's the theistic worldview? Because we decided that intellect, free will, objective morality. Where's objective morality? He lied. Okay. And human rights. Oh, there's the word. Why are we saying personhood? As well as reason, logic, design, and truth. We didn't say design. This is one of those things where it's like, it's just so bad you can't save it. And you should just stop trying. It's like when you cut your hair so badly, you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to shave it off. You know what I mean? It's over. We can't salvage this. We just got to start over. This is just so bad. Darwinists assume that some or all of these realities, when they defend their atheistic worldview, they can't have it both ways. Darwinists have the wrong box top. In the introduction, we said that the worldview is like a box top that allows you to place the many pieces of life's puzzle into a complete, cohesive picture. If you have the right box top, then the pieces make sense in light of the complete picture. But what happens if you keep discovering pieces that don't fit the box top you have? Common sense would tell you that you've got the wrong box top, so you have to look for the right one. Unfortunately, the Darwinists won't do this. Well, how about if people keep trying to throw in pieces that don't belong there, like the authors? Like, hey, look, I found this blue piece. And then you say, yeah, but the box top doesn't have any blue pieces, or it doesn't look like there's any blue pieces. Why are you trying to say this blue piece belongs here? It doesn't. That's what it seems like they're doing. This evidence strongly indicates that they have the wrong box top. But, well, what evidence? What evidence? We were promised empirically, empirically supported or empirically demonstrable scientific evidence. Where is it? And again, why are we talking about Darwinists? Isn't this about atheists? So they refuse to consider that it's even possible, much less look for the right one. Their preconceived box top shows a picture without intelligent causes. Yet, as they themselves acknowledge, they've discovered many pieces. As they themselves acknowledge, where? They've discovered many pieces to the puzzle that have clear appearance of being intelligently designed. Where was this? What do you mean they acknowledge? Where? They're just lying. They didn't even demonstrate this. In effect, they're trying to fit theistic pieces into their atheistic or materialistic. Now they're not interchangeable. How did they do this? Instead of discarding the wrong box top and finding the right one, Darwinists simply insist that the pieces aren't really what they appear to be. They try to fit every piece from the precisely designed universe, gross, to the information-rich single cell, gross. These are just made up descriptions. Into a puzzle that doesn't have those pieces in it. What? In doing so, they disregard observation. When did they observe God making this? When did they observe God making this? If they didn't observe God making this, then it cannot go into, oh, they disregarded observation. You didn't observe it. You didn't observe it, authors. Nobody observed this. I sound like Ken Ham. Were you there? As they themselves admit, when Darwinists are philosophically committed to their box top regardless of what the puzzle pieces look like, where does it say that? This is just so... Ugh. How do you find the right box top to the puzzle of life? How about you just put the pieces where they go and then see what picture it makes? Instead of saying, you know, we're not really sure which of these there's many box tops that have been proposed throughout the years. And instead of trying to figure out trying to use each box top to try to figure out where these pieces go, let's just put the pieces together where they fit and go from there. That's atheism, right? Instead of saying, oh, let's use the Hindu box top, let's use the ancient Egyptian theology box top, let's use the Christian box top. Instead of saying that, let's just put the pieces where they go and just see what picture it makes. That would be the atheistic worldview. How do you find the right box top? Arriving at the right box top is not a matter of preference. You like atheism, I like theism. No, it's a matter of objective fact. Great. Do you have any objective facts? Can you present? I was promised facts in this section that I just read, and I wasn't given any. Remember, empirically demonstrable. By using the self-evident first principles of logic and the correct principles of scientific investigation. Okay. So we don't like it when it's defined the way that it's defined. But if we make up our own definition, then that's the right way. And we don't like the other one because that's just a made-up definition. Jeez, these guys are guilty of everything they're claiming that atheists are guilty of. If this is a theistic universe, then naturalism is false. If naturalism is false, then Darwinists may not be interpreting the evidence correctly. Having the right box top is important because it provides the right context for interpreting the evidence. The context is the larger environment in which the evidence appears. So this is great, and are we... Okay, it's almost done. This is great, and I'm a fan of analogies, I really am, but we have to support it with facts. And we were promised demonstrable evidence, and we don't have it. We see that they don't know what atheism is. We see that they don't understand that they're just making up definitions for God and then saying, wow, these atheists are ignoring that God is real because we've made up definitions for him. Coconut, can you not just chew on plastic? You have toys. I don't understand. I'm leaving that in because that's more interesting than anything we've read. I appreciate analogies. I love analogies. I like the analogy of the box top and the puzzle. I think I mentioned that when we first read about it in like chapter 1. I like that analogy. I had high hopes for this, but we can't just keep throwing analogies out there. We have to provide those supporting facts. And all that we've seen is that they don't really know what they're talking about in a lot of different ways. Not least of which is just what atheists are even arguing, or that just because you follow the theory of evolutionary biology as an evolutionary biologist, that doesn't mean that you only look at things through that lens and therefore are a materialist. Because why would that? That doesn't make any sense. For example, if I tell you I just witnessed a man slashing open the stomach of a woman with a knife, you'd probably assume that the man did something wrong. But look at what happens when I reveal the context, the environment in which the incident took place. We were in a hospital delivery room, and the man was a doctor, and the baby's heart had just stopped. What would you think about the man now? I think I skipped part of this, that they're saying that the box top provides us context. So if we don't have the context, then we come to the wrong conclusion. And this is now about the slashing the stomach with a knife. I mean, you know, abdomen, but, you know. Because if you say, I witnessed a man slashing open the stomach of a woman, I mean, the baby is not in the stomach, right? But if they're talking about like an abdomen or something, I don't know. You know, maybe I'm just being nitpicky at this point, but I guess that's part of the problem that I'm running into with these authors, is that they're just kind of using a lot of just really casual terminology when they shouldn't be. But they don't know any better. And that's the part that I kind of am left with, is, are they using this casual terminology because they don't know any better? Or are they using it because it's an easier thing to communicate? I don't think that the word abdomen is more unusual or difficult for the average reader to understand than stomach, so they could have just used that. Once you understand the environment, your entire view of the evidence has changed. You now consider the man a hero rather than a villain because he was really trying to save the baby's life. Okay. Cool. And that's fine. But again, analogies only get you so far. It's the same thing with debates. It only gets you so far without evidence. So where's our evidence? Oh, great. In the same way, the evidence from biology must be interpreted in the light of the larger known environment. Fantastic. Are you going to demonstrate that you know God exists? As we've already discovered, the larger known environment is that this is a theistic universe. Demonstrate that we've discovered this. You've stated it. You've decided it. You've written it into the definition of God. But where did we discover this? There's actually an immaterial, powerful, and intelligent being beyond the natural world who created the universe and designed it precisely to allow life on Earth. Where did we discover this? Where's the demonstrable or empirically demonstrable scientific evidence we were promised? In other words, we already know beyond a reasonable doubt that the designer is part of the box top because the evidence shows that he has already designed the awesome universe with amazing complexity and precision. You know, guys, I feel like we can't go any further than this, because I feel like this should be in the conclusion after they've presented all the evidence. And if they think that this is enough, that they can decide that they have discovered and demonstrated in their book that this is a theistic universe, then what's the point of the rest of the chapters? Honestly. I feel like maybe we have hit an ending here. I mean, that doesn't mean we can't read other stuff. It's just, what's the point? The authors, I mean, what chapter are we in? How many chapters are in this thing? Let me double check. So this is where we are. We're on chapter 5, and they've already decided that they have given us enough to declare that we, the authors, have demonstrated that it was discovered that this is a theistic world. What's the point of the other 10 chapters? What's the point? It just seems to be, do we have early testimony about Jesus, and then Jesus. Now notice, what is this? I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. It's not I don't have enough faith to be a non-Christian. But it was so important for them to not only say, oh, we've decided that it's a theistic universe, but also that it's not just theistic, it has to be our specific deity and our specific understanding of our specific deity. So maybe we can jump into 8, because this new life forms from goo to you via the zoo. This is going to be more about them not understanding evolution. Mother Teresa versus Hitler. This is going to be about if there's no objective moral lawgiver, then how could we say that one of them is right and one of them is wrong? This ignores, all the bad stuff that Mother Teresa did. Like, for somebody like me who's in a lot of pain, she would want me to be in pain and not give me helpful medication because she believed that suffering is getting her closer to Jesus. But of course, when she was suffering medically, she definitely got medical help. So I don't know, chapter 8 looks like it might be interesting. Maybe we'll just jump to chapter 8 next time. Look at this. In light of the fact that a designer exists, in light of the fact that this designer exists, citation needed. The previous chapters are just a bunch of, we don't understand what an atheist is, and we don't understand how to present an argument to people that don't already accept what we're saying is true. Or even just presenting a cohesive argument. They've lied. They promised that they were going to provide empirically demonstrable scientific evidence, and they haven't. So they've lied about it. They're talking about things that they have absolutely no education in or no experience in. So they're just saying our lack of understanding of what an atheist is and all of these topics is enough information for us to decide that God exists. It's such a bizarre conclusion. When we see biological systems that even Darwinists like Richard Dawkins recognize give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose, maybe we ought to conclude they really were designed for a purpose. I don't know, maybe we should use some of the context that this was, that you guys were talking about, that if we just quote mine, that we can make it say whatever we want. Weren't they just talking about that? That we have to view evidence in the right context? So if an evidence is a piece of a phrase, maybe view it in the right context? William Dembski points out, if a creature looks like a dog, smells like a dog, barks like a dog, feels like a dog, and pants like a dog, the burden of evidence lies with the person insisting that creature isn't a dog. Cool. Where did you show God is real without just defining attributes you've decided he has? Because that's really where we're at. You've decided God has attributes without ever showing he exists. That's a really weird thing to do. Once you think about it, that's a weird thing. That theists say that we don't know God, no one has seen God, we don't understand his ways, he's bigger than us, he's outside of space and time, etc., but then make really solid declarations about what his nature is. That's really bizarre. Isn't it that bizarre? So it's not that it looks like a dog and smells like a dog, it's that we've decided it's a magical being. And now you're saying, so prove it isn't a magical being. Okay, well, why would you assume it is? Since the universe is created and designed, then we should expect life to be created and designed as well. So again, wow, that's beautiful, just as it stands, right? Because they believe the universe is created and designed, and they can't even say, therefore, life is also created and designed. They're just saying, since we've decided that one is true, the other one's probably true too. That's what they're saying. At least it's possible that life was created by intelligence. Ruling out that possibility beforehand is clearly illegitimate. What? What is this saying? So these first two parts of the first paragraph and the majority of the second paragraph here is saying, oh yeah, slam dunk. We totally proved it. Atheists are stupid. Obviously this is all design, and anybody who disagrees, they're all liars. I mean, maybe it's possible. We can't rule it out. So which is it? We've discovered that we are in a theistic universe and that this designer absolutely does exist, and that if it walks like a god and talks like a god and pants like a god, it's got to be a god. I mean, well, maybe. This is the part that just blows my mind. These guys can't even be internally consistent. I can't imagine, like, if my students tried to do a conclusion like this, where they're like, yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know. I can't even imagine my students writing an essay this poorly done. My goodness. So the conclusion that life is the product of an intelligent designer makes sense, because it's not a lone piece of evidence. There is no lone piece of evidence. There's no pieces of evidence. It's consistent with other scientific findings. No. Or to continue with our jigsaw puzzle metaphor, well, why don't we just stop with the metaphor and just give the evidence? How about that? It's a piece that fits perfectly with the other pieces of the puzzle. Well, sure, because you've tailor-made it to fit the puzzle. It's not a piece that you found and said, hey, check this out. It's a piece that you're like, oh, are you guys having trouble finding this piece? Here, let me just make something up and then I'll force fit it in there. And that's the same, right? That's the same. Summary and conclusion. We've covered a lot of ground. Let's sum it up. in a few short points. One, life does not consist merely of chemicals. If that were the case, mixing the chemicals of life in a test tube would produce life. Life consists of more than chemicals. It is specified complexity, which only comes from a mind, which is, again, just made up. That's just a made up definition. Therefore, materialism is false, which, again, doesn't even get us close to a God or close to what atheists believe. There are numerous additional reasons why materialism is false. Well, no, because you had to use the same one twice. Including that reason would be impossible if the universe was materialistic. There are no known natural laws, point 2, that create specified complexity or information. Now they're just making up terms. Specified complexity is a term from creationism. It doesn't exist outside of it, and if it does, I definitely haven't seen it. And then now to say that specified complexity is information. I thought specified complexity was similar to irreducible. What is it? Irreducible complexity? That it's as complex as it needs to be. And now it's information. So our skeleton is information. Okay. Only intelligence has been observed to create specified complexity, such as take out the garbage mom, drink a Coke, Mount Rushmore, etc. These are references to the previous video. Point 3, the simplest life consists of amazing specified complexity, equivalent to 1,000 complete sets of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Einstein said, God doesn't play dice with the universe. He was right. As Philip Gould said, God plays Scrabble. Okay, so again, just misrepresenting stuff and just making it up. Who cares what Philip Gould says? Who cares? Who cares what Einstein said? Like, let's just show what Einstein can demonstrate. Einstein didn't believe in some what is stuff about some of the stuff about the quantum mechanics or quantum physics as far as I understand or remember. Point 4, science is a search for causes that is built on philosophy. There's only 2 types of causes, intelligent and natural, because they've decided that. The authors have decided that. But Darwinists philosophically rule out intelligent causes before they even look at the evidence, because again, it's a hammer. It's not a paintbrush, right? That's why when Darwinists look at the 1,000 encyclopedias, despite observing and recognizing their obvious design, so we've said we've incorrectly associated them with 1,000 encyclopedias, and so now obviously when these foolish fools look at these obviously 1,000 encyclopedias and they don't decide that somebody wrote it, they're just faking it. But if take out the garbage mom requires an intelligent design, then so do 1,000 encyclopedias. They're just like switching out terms, making up words. They're just making things up and just swapping it out as if it's the same thing. Spontaneous generation of life, which is absolutely not what this is, which Darwinism requires to get the theory started, has never been observed. It is believed in by faith. No, it's not. It's just, hey, we don't know. Let's go with what we have. That's why they don't have, that's why it's not in part, that's why it's not there. Like, that's why it doesn't show up in the theory of evolution, because we don't know. That's it, we don't know. And in light of the strong cosmological and teleological evidence that this is a theistic universe, again, no, you didn't provide that. And for many other reasons, the Darwinian belief that in naturalism or now naturalism is materialism, again, wow, we're playing fast and loose with words. I would not accept this from a student. I would say you're just putting together a bunch of words because you think that they are synonymous and they're not. This is why we don't just blindly use the thesaurus. This is why we don't just talk about things we don't understand. Go back and do it again. I would not accept this from a student. So naturalism is also an article of faith, hence Darwinism is nothing more than a secular religion masquerading as science. But you just said science is bad philosophy, so isn't bad philosophy just religion? So why are we saying it's masquerading as anything? Why not just say science is religion? I don't know. The skeptic may say, wait a minute, you're moving much too fast. No, that is not what the skeptic is saying. No. What makes you think that intelligent design is scientific? No, I'm asking, why did you decide that you've demonstrated it? That's what I asked. Isn't ID just another case of the God of the gaps fallacy, prematurely bringing God into the picture because you haven't found a natural cause yet? No, that's not what it is. See, they're so close to getting it right. Because now they're going to say that you're assuming that there's a natural cause. Why should we give up looking for a natural cause? In fact, it seems like ideas, Bible thumping, six-day creationism being smuggled into the public debate under a new name. And what about the evidence for the evolution of new life forms you have yet to mention? I didn't even care about that. Didn't mention it. Answers to these and other Darwinist claims are coming in the next chapter. You know what? They're not. You haven't answered anything. All you've done is just, again, you can't even... I've predicted what you're saying, which shows that I know your arguments. I understand your arguments. I disagree with them, but I understand the arguments you're making. And that is evidenced by the fact that I have accurately predicted many times during this video series the stuff that you guys were going to say. You have yet to be on that level. I think maybe one time I agreed, oh yeah, that does seem interesting. Maybe twice it was. But it's definitely nowhere near as well as I'm demonstrating that I understand your argument. You are not demonstrating that you understand my argument anywhere near this level. So not only will we address those claims, but we will also provide more pieces to the puzzle that confirm that intelligent design people, not the Darwinists, have the right box top. Okay. What a waste of everything. Time, electricity, book printing, publishers' time. I mean, what a waste. What a waste. Well, if you guys want to tell me your thoughts, I would find them far more interesting and entertaining than anything found in this book thus far. And on that note, I think we're just gonna leave it there, not really wrap it up. I don't think there's anything more to say about this. I think I've said it all, and I would just end up being repeating myself more than I already have. If you guys want to help out with some of the caffeine, makeup, and aspirin that's required to deal with this stuff, then I'd really appreciate if you guys would support me over on Patreon. I finally added the $1 tier. I thought I had it, but I didn't. So if you want to join the lemonade stand or any of the other tiers, you can, for as little as $1 a month, get access to all kinds of posts, different videos, a monthly live stream for patrons only, a separate section in Discord for patrons only, and I think that's about it. And then the different tiers also provide some different opportunities as well, or some different... I ran out of words. I'm done. My brain is fried. Thank you guys for joining me so far with this, and let me know if you're okay with skipping ahead to chapter 8, which might be interesting because it sounds like theology and they're theologians. So we might actually get something interesting to read instead of just a bunch of me yelling at the screen, hating life. On that note, guys, thanks for listening.